Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to do one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I'll be reviewing the movie and the recently, still kind of pretty much released Blu-ray by Arrow Video of the film, classic sci-fi film from 1972 by the name of Silent Running. I was able to get this for $20, otherwise I probably wouldn't have got it. I think it's probably back up to $28 now, and probably that's its normal price. I was really surprised that I was able to basically get this on more or less release date for $20, so that's one of the good things about it coming out around the quote-unquote holiday season or whatever. I was interested in this when it was announced and stuff, but you know, I don't think I was going to be willing to pay the high 20s for it, but when it was, you know, pre-orderable for $20, I was like, you know what, getting it around release day for 20 bucks, I think I like this movie enough to get it. Plus I don't have it on Blu-ray, and I haven't bought this on any version for quite a while, so I figured I'd go for it and get it. I'll talk about the movie, and then I'll review or talk about what I've watched of this recently released Arrow Video Blu-ray. Before I start my review of the movie, I just want to showcase some of this stuff that I do have. I can't remember if I have the VHS. I may have gotten a previously viewed VHS from Video Update, you know, when they were blowing out their VHSs and stuff. I looked a little bit, I couldn't find it. I might not have ever had it on VHS. My history with Silent Running goes back to, I think, my childhood in the 80s. I think I saw, you know, probably not the whole thing, but I'm sure I saw some of this on TV. I can remember being a kid and, you know, being interested in sci-fi, you know, movies, visual effects. I was a big fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey from, you know, when I was a kid all the way until now. So I really liked, the thing I liked about this movie, of course, were probably the drones and the little walkie robots and the special effects spaceship shots and stuff. So I don't think I watched it from the beginning to end, you know, when I was a kid, but I was aware of this movie probably, you know, when I was maybe, I don't know, 9, 10, 11, or 12-ish or something like that. So this has been a movie that's been on my radar for quite a while, and I'm not exactly sure the first time I saw it all the way through. It might possibly be when I got this DVD, which came out, I think, in the late 90s. I think this is the very first Silent Running DVD in North America, put out by Image Entertainment, one of these snapcase releases of Silent Running. I looked on eBay yesterday, and you know, there's one listing that wants, I think, almost 50 bucks for this. Not to say that they're gonna get it, but I think this is kind of rare. I only saw 2 of them on eBay yesterday, so that's kind of cool to have this. It should be said that this is, you know, it's what they're calling letterboxed edition, a 1:8:5 ratio, but it's not enhanced, so you're gonna have to zoom it in on your widescreen monitor. But for the time, it was a decent presentation of the movie. So that's the front of the cover and the back, and since it's one of these snapper cases, the case snaps open, and not amazing use of the inside there, kind of minimalistic, I guess. But this is your, probably the first DVD of Silent Running in North America in the lovely snapper case. And it looks like sometime in 2005, you know, judging from the price, I got this previously viewed for $5.98. I figured since it was an upgrade and it was anamorphic widescreen enhanced, or also known as enhanced 16:9 widescreen. And this has actually special features, so it's got commentary with the director Douglas Trumbull, and making a Silent Running, and Silent Running by, well, you can read these special features on this DVD, but the official, I think the first official Universal, it's a Universal movie, so I think this is the first Universal release in North America of Silent Running, and this came out in 2002, so not long after the Image one actually came out, they put this out. And obviously the, you know, the image is probably considerably better on this, being enhanced for widescreen TVs, and there's the little back of that. I don't really like, I think the cover on this is pretty much crap. Looks like I still got the receipt, so I got it in May 6th, 2005, but it's got this little thing, the cover, that I don't think's that great, and that stuff on the inside there. DVD there. And I promise I'm going to get to the movie review just after I show this, which I got, I think, used at some point at a record store. This is not the original. I was surprised. This is a vinyl record of the soundtrack, which way back when I got it, I put it on CD. And I think I've subsequently ripped to MP3s. And, you know, it's not the most amazing music in the world, but for what it is, I like it. And of course, we've got the two classic, what I kind of call hippie songs in this movie, of course, as well. And I would have assumed this was the original release, but it is not. Up in the corner it says previously released as Decca DL, and you got those numbers there. So this particular LP's got a copyright of 1978 on the back. Obviously the movie came out in 72, so this is not, as I already said, not the first LP released, but it's nonetheless still an LP of the soundtrack from the 70s. Showing you the front there, and then a little glimpse at the back. So this movie was actually directed by Douglas Trumbull, and if you know anything about the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, you'll know that he was a big part of special effects for that movie. From what I understand about his collaboration in that movie is he was only really responsible for, I forgot exactly what they called it, was it slit scan? Something like that. The effect at the end of the movie when you know, David Bowman goes out of the Discovery and goes into the warp zone or warp field, or you know, speeding up into the unknown or whatever. I think from what I understand, Douglas Trumbull was responsible, or was the creator of those goofy ass psychedelic effects when David Bowman was traveling, you know, I guess into the unknown, if you will. So this is, you know, it's not really that long after 2001 that he would be able to get to direct. I don't know if this is his directing debut. I don't know how many movies he's done. If this is it, I don't know. I don't know Douglas Trumbull's filmography. But nonetheless, this is a Douglas Trumbull movie. So I guess, you know, when I first saw it, whenever I first saw it, I guess I was hoping that the visual space effects would be more akin to 2001, but I think Stanley Kubrick was the one that did, like, the, you know, created and supervised, you know, the majority of the visual effects for 2001. That's why those were so good. So as far as like the models and all this and that in the space, you know, for special effects photography and stuff like that. So I guess when I first saw this, I was kind of disappointed that you know, the exterior shots of the ships and stuff like that weren't a little more closer to the 2001, you know. I mean, I guess it's really not that much different or whatever, but I guess some of the visual effects in this movie are just more of the common visual effects for the time versus, you know, the amazing special effects that that 2001: A Space Odyssey achieved. One thing I do like about the opening of this movie is, you know, the music score is really great, and it's kind of a, you know, the opening music for this movie is like the orchestral version of a song that would come out, you know, "Rejoice in the Sun," that would end up being played later on in the movie. It's like the instrumentational, you know, instrumentation, orchestral, you know, non-vocal version of it is what opens the movie with the opening credits. And what I really like about the opening is, I hadn't seen this for a while, it's like these super macro shots of just, like, you know, frogs and you know, snails and this kind of really small, you know, just earth life stuff, you know, super macro shots of these living creatures just slithering around and just hopping around, or like a turtle. So there's several, like maybe 3 or 4 different shots of like little small animals in super macro that the camera goes over them or shows them, and we're quickly introduced to the, you know, Bruce Dern character and having a swim or whatever. And I like the way the movie starts, where it's like you wouldn't know that it's taking place on a spaceship or whatever. It looks like it's you know, the introduction of the movie looks like it's taking place on Earth or whatever. And then just because of the movie, this movie's theme, I love, or the theme of this movie in terms of the story and the synopsis, it is really cool that, you know, it opens with the heavy emphasis on the nature and the natural nature elements and stuff, and only when we kind of go further on into the beginning of the movie do we realize that, you know, instead of taking place on Earth, this is actually taking place on like a spaceship that is just carrying several domes where, you know, earthly forest habitats have been contained in. So that aspect of the movie is one of the things, even now, so many years later, is really, really cool about this movie. And yes, it could obviously be said this is a cautionary tale, if you will, and it's this stuff is put in movies on purpose, and all this and that. But the average viewer could see this as being a cautionary tale about, if we don't take better care of our environment, maybe this will happen. The basic premise with this movie is, there's this little spiel that you can hear, something about this guy talking about the turn of the century or something. So one can only assume this takes place in the early years of the 21st century. And having them being out in space for like 7 or 8 years or something like that, maybe it takes place around 2007 or 2008 or something like that. But one can only assume this takes place in the early 21st century. Basically, Earth has been so ravaged by just whatever pollution and all this and that there's actually, and it's kind of confusing because they only talk about it in the context of the United States. So I was surprised that they don't talk about it more in the context of the planet. But from what I understand, there's no more forest anything in the United States. What's left of the United States forest is basically on these ships. I think there's like 3 of them that they sent out with several of these domes that are just like, so basically their genius plan was to send out what's left of the forests of the United States into space for years, so hopefully we can fix things on planet Earth. So then when we get things fixed, we can have the ships come back and transplant the forests back onto the soil of the United States, so we can start growing forests again. Which is, when you say it out loud, it kind of sounds really stupid, but I mean, I guess that's an accurate depiction of politicians' frame of mind and thinking process. But that's the premise of this movie, and even now, that's really kind of a cool idea, and I can't even imagine what this people thought of this movie's idea back in 1972. It's really kind of a cool idea, and this is like the perfect blending of like hippie, and when I say hippie music or hippie thoughts or hippie ideas or whatever, I don't really mean it in a degrading way. It's just kind of, I mean, let's face it, because of the time this movie came out in and stuff like that, it is basically very much kind of a hippie movie, more or less, like a hippie sci-fi movie. And I guess on one hand I do mean it to kind of be degrading, and on the other hand, what the movie is about is important, and I do agree with it, which is they have been out there in these things, these spaceships, for I think 7 or 8 years or something at this point. And when the beginning of the movie happens, we're introduced with the Bruce Dern character, who is just the guy who really, really loves the forests and takes care of all there's actually critters and animals and bunny rabbits and stuff in these domes that go along with the forests and stuff. Hopefully no grizzly bear. We didn't see any grizzly bears, so I don't think they have any grizzly bears, but they got the little animals and bunnies and bugs and snails and turtles and frogs and stuff. So when we're introduced to Bruce Dern's character, who's Lowell, it's hard for me to kind of even say his name. He's someone who loves the forest and is someone who's really a caretaker of the forest and really believes that these are really, really important. Which I would, for the record, I would side with Bruce Dern's character's side in this movie. I completely agree with him. He's also on the ship with 3 other guys, which are kind of asshole guys. So this Bruce Dern character, he's more of like an old-fashioned fellow, where he thinks that going out in the woods and being a part of nature is important, which I agree with too. And the other people, presumably everyone else in the country, certainly the other 3 guys on the ship that he's on with him, are more of the completely fine with being not outdoors and not having any forests in North America, and completely fine with just eating synthetic garbage that comes out of this wherever the hell the synthetic food comes from in the movie and stuff like that. So the more I talk about it, the more this is about kind of the reality of the situation, where I do feel like the popular culture in North America, I can't really speak for the rest of the world, although it's very similar to North America, but we'll just talk about North America, where popular culture is very much, as the years go on and on and on, I think people regard more and more, maybe not everyone, but I think I think the general consensus over the idiots of North America is that, the outdoors and nature and all this and that is like dirty and grimy and bugs, and then you got all these assholes that spray these chemicals all over themselves when they go outside because they don't want to get, mosquitoes bugging them, which you can understand. Mosquitoes aren't really fun, but to spray yourself down with chemicals that repels bugs kind of makes you like, okay, so if the bugs don't like it, it must not be very good for you. But I'm getting off on a tangent. So basically, what this movie says is very true about what has kind of been happening since the movie came out, as far as people just being detached from nature, and more just okay with eating crap that they don't even know what's in the ingredients, and just more comfortable just with more of a technological state of life. When you see people in the summer who've got their windows up and presumably the AC on, and I'm like, it's not even freaking hot out. These people who drive around, who never have their windows down. It's either they've either got the heater on or the AC on, and there's there's so much that this movie says even so long ago that I just see now, and it's just like, oh my God, it's kind of scary in that regard. But what ends up happening at the beginning of the movie is we find out that they've been out there for, like I said, 7 or 8 years, and at the beginning of the movie we find out very quickly there's a communication from, the ship that Bruce Dern and the other 3 guys are on, I think, is one of 3 ships, and we hear from, I think, this other ship, this guy who's on the other ship who's like, well, we got communication from Earth that, that the funding has run out for this project or program or whatever, and we have to jettison the domes and return to Earth. And it's just like, so basically after 7 or 8 years, we're just going to abandon. And this is actually very realistic. If they did this for real, this is exactly what would happen, by the way, too. That they'd spend all this money on this shit and spend, nearly a decade, and who knows, maybe they'd have them spend longer in space, and only to probably jettison the last of the North American forests anyway. And it's just one thing that I will give this movie is it's really realistic, because that's exactly probably what would happen. So that at this point, all the 3 guys are like, yay, we're going home, because to them they were trapped out in the spaceships and whatever, and this was a crappy job for them or whatever, and they're all happy. Meanwhile, like, Bruce Dern character is like, oh my God, this is like the biggest travesty for humanity. Like, this is the last of these forests, and we've got an order to just jettison them into deep space, and just that's it. That's the end of it. There's no reclaiming them. So like I say, you can't really talk about this movie without talking, calling it kind of a hippie movie or whatever. And like I say, I mean it in a both degrading and a good way. Like, degrading in that, I don't know, we just screw that whole notion. But I mean, it's an important thing, and to be fair, and to be clear with you guys, and I do very much take the side of the Lowell character in this movie, and what he basically proceeds to do is basically kill, and it's really kind of hardcore. And what's funny about this movie is it's rated G, just like 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is rated G, and I think there's more like blood in this movie than Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is really funny. Like, in a fight with one of these guys, Lowell gets his knee or his leg hit with a shovel, and his leg's all bloody. And it's like, I think there's more blood on his leg than you see in the whole of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the original movie from '74, which is funny. And this movie's rated G. And it's funny how he kills 3 people in this movie, on basically on camera, more or less, and it's rated G. That's just funny. But he kills this one guy by clunking him with a shovel, and then basically the other 2 guys. See, there's several domes with forests in them, so they're supposed to take all these these bombs and go to each dome and put the bomb in a little tube and arm it, and then go to the next dome and put all these bombs in these domes and jettison them, and then they explode them, which is just, I forgot about the exploding part when I was talking about it, which is just so pathetic. So what ends up happening is, the 2 guys, after he kills the one guy, 2 guys are putting a bomb in this other dome, and he basically just remotely ejects the dome while they're still in it and explodes it. It's just like kind of hardcore. It's just like, I don't know, this movie really goes there really quick. So of course, when he was having a struggle and killing that first guy, there was a big struggle, and he got his knee or his leg effed up. So there's these three what they call drones in this movie, which are very obviously a precursor to the droids that would come about in the famous Star Wars films. It's interesting how, a lot of people probably think, R2-D2 and all this and that is something that George Lucas created. Well, I mean, these drones are very much the same as the droids from Star Wars films. As a matter of fact, who knows if George Lucas, got the droids idea from the drones from Silent Running, very possible. But the way they do these things, is some people may look at them and be like, how do they do them? Is just like with the Full Moon movie, Seed People, it can only be assumed that the drones are performed by people in this movie who basically don't have legs, So the people that, have no legs are actually, basically wearing the drone suits, if you will. And that's probably one of the reasons why the bottoms of the drones vary in different lengths and stuff. Like one of them will be shorter, one of them will be longer in the bottom, because probably the three different performers have different variation of, different amount of stuff, legs or amount, whatever the hell they've got on them physically, is probably what obviously, is what they built the drone things around their physical bodies, But the drone one, of course, I think is the one that's basically got the least underneath, where it's really quite the ingenious, robot effect, if you will, by taking people without lower halves of their body who can walk around on their hands, and modeling robots, in this case what they call drones, around their physical condition, just like the Full Moon movie Seed People would end up doing in the future, is really an interesting idea, and it's really a great way to, I guess, take advantage of something that might not be that positive of a situation or whatever. But there's three drones in the movie, which he basically, just like with Star Wars, what would come about with Star Wars, the drones are basically maintenance robots, and he kind of, Lowell kind of reprograms them to be, he puts all these, to be his, to listen to him instead of the automatic maintenance on the ship and stuff. They're going to be under his command, and he puts all kinds of medical programs in them. So it's kind of an interesting scene how these robots basically perform this operation on his leg to fix his leg, and obviously there's a lot of symbolism and stuff going on there with just like, wow, you've got these machines looking over this, this living organic person and fixing him, and without these machines he wouldn't be able to be, he wouldn't be able to fix his leg or have his leg fixed. So that's kind of a cool scene. And to be honest, I mean, I can't even remember, because, he kills the people really fairly early on in the movie. And, I think this movie's like, I don't know, you're 90 minutes long or whatever, and it's not like, I can't really even remember what necessarily goes on from the point where, the drones fix his leg to the end of the movie. I mean, it's just like, all I know is that it's not, obviously he's pretty much there by himself, and the drones and stuff. I mean, he does things like he plays cards with the drones and all this and that, and I guess the fact that I can't remember it's a good thing, because it can make the review shorter. But that's the basic gist of the movie, and throughout the course of the movie we just see him trying to, I guess we see him kind of deteriorate mentally and physically to a certain extent, because he starts eating, the synthetic crap, and the place starts becoming a mess, and he starts eating the synthetic crap that he was, berating the other three guys for eating. And he has, he's sitting around, and you can tell just by with the little insert shots they show that he has regrets about killing. I mean, he didn't want to kill these three people. He had to make a choice, and he has regrets about killing these people to preserve the forests and stuff like that. And at some point, one of the things that happens before he's fixed is he has to make it look like to the other ships that there's some kind of damage done to him, because he can't, because these three ships are along, just traveling next to each other. So he's got to fake this thing where, he's got technical difficulties, so he can basically, become a part of, go away without them wanting to follow him or whatever. And so he ejects all this cargo, he does this and that, he goes through the rings of Saturn and stuff, and they don't think he's going to be able to survive going through the rings of Saturn and stuff. So he does all this stuff, and it's kind of a funny scene where he's talking on the radio to this other ship and, you know, making up all this bullshit and that we know isn't true, but it's kind of funny, you know, to try to convince the other ships that he's actually having technical difficulties and he's not able to control, you know, being on a runaway ship or whatever. And what ends up happening later on towards the end of the movie is they end up finding him again, which is something that he's not really, it's not a good thing, because obviously he doesn't want to be found, because they're going to want him to blow up the last, I didn't mention that they blew up all the domes except one on his ship. He saved one of the domes with the forests in it. And obviously he wants to not be discovered, because then they're just going to tell him to blow up the dome and let's go home. So at the end of the movie, there he's discovered again, and I can't remember if he's got some physical ailment. There's something that he's like, because there's only one, you know, the third, he names the three drones Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and the Louie gets, like, he gets his foot caught in something and dies going through, when the ship goes through the Saturn rings or whatever. So that robot, you know, doesn't last very long, and I think at some point, I can't remember, I think the other robot, like Huey, so Dewey would have gotten, I don't know, it seems to me like something happened to the other robot, but he was able to be fixed to a certain extent. I can't remember exactly why, you know, why Bruce Dern character can't take care of Forrest anymore. I suppose because now that the other ship found him, they're going to want to take him back to Earth. So what Bruce Dern character Lowell ends up doing is, you know, putting basically Huey, which is the #1 drone robot, he teaches him how to take care of the Forest, and just ejects him from the ship and doesn't blow it up, ejects him from the ship into deep space. And then, oh God, I forgot that, and then Lowell really goes there, rated G movie, 3 murders on camera, then a suicide on camera on this G-rated movie. Then he blows himself up in the ship after the drone is jettisoned in the last, you know, forest dome into space or whatever, to, you know, and that's the end of the movie, where we just see Huey. Is it Huey? Huey, Dewey? I don't know. It's one of them. It's Drone 1. Yeah, I think it is Huey. Drone 1, who is at the very end of the movie, as the music comes up, seen, you know, taking care of the forests, and, you know, so he can technically take care of the forests forever in this dome floating through space. And it's really kind of the interesting ending, you know, very much with like the drones, you know, fixing him up, or being, if he didn't have the drones, he wouldn't have been able to have his leg fixed up. It's just like it's just an interesting dynamic that you send off this technology, this non-living robot, to basically, in this dome, to be the one to look after and take care of the last remaining forest. And again, it's kind of hard to understand. They only really talk about the United States of America in this movie, so I don't know if this is supposed to be the last forest from the planet, or just the last forest from the United States of America. But either way you slice it, this is an important forest. So that's kind of an interesting ending for the movie, and it's just like, it's kind of a, you know, I was watching a clip on YouTube, and there was a lot of people had said in the comments, this is the first movie, you know, when I was a kid, that really made me cry. And it's just like, yeah, I can see that, and that's really kind of cool. And it is a kind of a very much touching movie, and a movie that really says a lot to, if you're like me, someone who does really hold nature and just woods and forest environments in high regard. So it is definitely a movie really up my alley. I'm going to go 3 stars out of 4 stars for Silent Running. It's just one of those, you know, just freaking early 70s sci-fi classics, and Bruce Dern does a great job. And like I say, it's just like, I can't even really remember what happens in the middle of the movie. All I know is it never really gets boring. It's really, you know, it's a movie that, it's just a really cool, quaint sci-fi movie. Once again, I think if you're expecting more of a more of a high-class visual treat from the guy who did some visual effects on 2001: A Space Odyssey. Unfortunately, you know, there's nothing that's really jaw-dropping like the visual effects in that movie to really be found here. But it's still, you know, it's still a really pretty great sci-fi movie that is like pro nature or whatever, pro just natural world, I guess. Now on to my review of the Arrow Video Blu-ray release. Mine came with a slipcase, probably because it was pretty much shipped to me on right around release day. Newly commissioned, we can only assume here, cover art by Arrow Video, which gets the job done. I think it's relatively decent cover art. I mean, it's definitely, you know, those are the rings of Saturn that he had to, you know, traverse and get through and risk his life for, and lost a drone to go through and stuff. I think the newly commissioned artwork for this release is pretty good and definitely captures the feel of the movie. I kind of like how it's like just the back of, you know, a drone in the back of the Lowell character looking out into the expanse of space with the, you know, the green around him. It's a pretty good newly commissioned cover art. Looking at the special edition contents here, I'll read some of them. You can pause and read the rest if you so choose. Brand new 2K restoration from the original camera negative, and it's really cool because it's approved by director Douglas Trumbull and produced by Arrow Video exclusively for this release. I think we'll pretty much, all we'll pretty much say is there's a brand new audio commentary by these critics, and original audio commentary by Douglas Trumbull and actor Bruce Dern. The rest of the stuff you can read. It looks like I'm not exactly sure, but quite possibly the only new special feature is the commentary by the critics. I'm not exactly sure. It looks like No Turning Back, a new interview with film music historian. A new visual essay. Okay, so I guess there's other new stuff on here, but unfortunately I just don't have the time to look at all these special features in a timely manner, so I didn't look at any of these special features, so I guess this is kind of a little bit of a lazy Blu-ray review to that extent, but I just, these days the time is limited and I just don't have a lot of it to just be watching all these special features. It's hard enough just to watch these movies. So having watched the Blu-ray presentation of this particular movie, I can safely say that most likely this is probably the best presentation this movie has ever gotten on home video to date. Arrow Video's been doing us a great favor by releasing and remastering a lot of these Universal movies that haven't been given, you know, done justice on Blu-ray thus far and stuff like that. They've been releasing a lot of Universal movies as of late. You know, obviously I haven't, since I didn't show you the Universal Blu-ray of this movie, I don't have that, so I can't compare it to that, but one can only assume that that was kind of DNR'd. You know, in the early days of Blu-ray, Universal was known for DNRing a lot of the grain out and stuff of, you know, just the natural film grain and stuff. So obviously I can mention, or I can confirm and happily say that, you know, the transfer of this movie on this Blu-ray presentation is absolutely amazing, and the grain is, you've got a nice grain field. What's really strange about this movie is I looked on, I don't know where the hell I read it, if it was blue-ray.com or something like that, but apparently there was like a 6-track, 5 or 6 track, you know, stereo surround, if I'm understanding correctly, soundtrack produced for the 70mm prints of this movie. I don't know if I'm understanding that correctly or not, but one thing I'm kind of confused about is if there was this 5 or 6 track, you know, stereo surround track created for this movie for the 70mm, you know, prints and distribution of this movie, why that couldn't be included on this Blu-ray release. One of the things that's kind of a bummer about this movie, but being an original mono guy, I mean, it's really not the biggest deal in the world. It's just original mono. It's funny how I'm such an original mono guy, but then when the Blu-ray features nothing but original mono, I have a problem with it. That's kind of weird. That's just me being goofy, I guess. But the Blu-ray really shines, of course, with the image quality. And I will say I did watch it on, like a receiver situation, just with the center channel blaring. And it was interesting that with the scenes where they separated the domes from the ships and stuff like that, there was a decent amount of like low end, like when the domes are like separated from the rest of the ship and stuff. Like it was almost like there was just a a 0.1 channel or something like that. Remember that thing that Universal did in the 70s called Sensorround or whatever, where they just produced a low frequency vibration. I wonder. I don't think I ever read anything about or there's nothing about like the Sensorround, anything like that in regards to this movie's release or anything like that. But it kind of reminded you of that. So like the whole movie is basically more or less bass free, but all of a sudden there's like 2 or 3 instances where the domes are separating from the ships, and there's like, oh my god, all of a sudden there's just this really, pretty deep rumble. So even on a mono track, I would still kind of recommend watching it on your receiver in the little mono speaker in the center there, because if you've got any, bass reproduction capabilities with your receiver, which I can only imagine you would, you're gonna hear that pretty nice bass during those scenes of the separation of the domes from the ships or whatever. So that's one thing that I can say about the mono track that was surprising, is that it's just like that came out of left field. Like, wow, that's a pretty good rumble. But mono audio track, which of course for me is absolutely fine. I don't think there's ever been, even on the Universal DVD release, I don't think they've ever, I don't think there's ever been a home video release at 5.1 the movie, which is fine. I don't know, part of me would almost rather have a 5.1 version just as an option. Obviously original mono was the most important. I wouldn't want a release that was like 5.1 only without original mono option. So obviously if you're going to have only one audio, original mono is the way to go. But it is a mystery about that soundtrack that was created for the 70mm release, that is just like, what, it just was created and just disappeared into the the annals of history, if you will. But getting on to the packaging, I've shown you the slipcase. When you take the slipcase off, you've got the same artwork underneath with the same artwork on the back that's on the slipcase. And as so often is the case with a release like this, you've got reversible cover art options. So you've got the option for this particular cover art, or this cover art, which of course is the original theatrical poster art, which I'm going to leave facing out on the Blu-ray, because then when you put the slipcase over, it's kind of cool when they offer a slipcase with newly commissioned artwork, and then they also let you have the original artwork underneath. I always have original artwork underneath with the newly commissioned slipcase covering it. It's really kind of cool how they went with the white for this, the original artwork option. And then on the spine there, it's all cool. And look at how cool it is. Kind of hard to see, but on the back, just being like all white background and stuff, it's kind of a completely different and cool look. But definitely, more times often than not, I use, I'm obviously a original mono guy, and also more or less a original artwork guy. There have been some rare instances where the newly commissioned artwork I've liked more than original, but in this case, you just gotta go with original for this one. Look at that. Opening up the case, this is what you see inside. You've got your disc and booklet with newly commissioned artwork on it. I'll be a nice guy and show some of the more interesting booklet pages. Got the drones there. Picture of Lowell, drone playing cards. That was an interesting scene where he formerly played cards with the guys that were on the ship, but having killed them, he had to actually start playing cards with the drones. That's some classic imagery right there. Just still shot there. That's one of the assholes that he kills. Cool shot of the model. Cool shot of a drone. Probably one of the scenes where he was more lonely and regretful that he killed his crew, but he had to do it to preserve the forests. I think this is the last page about the restoration, and you got a cute little picture of him holding the bunny there. Oh yeah, that was another interesting point about this movie. Here are the drones burying the guy he killed. It was like he didn't want to go back there himself to do it, so he had the robots do it, which was really kind of an interesting commentary on, I guess humanity. Back of the booklet, front of the booklet. Interesting commentary on humanity and having machines do the hard work for us, like hard in terms of physical work, like it's strenuous, physically strenuous, but in that case, in that moment, that was like emotionally strenuous. I'm going to have the robot do this emotionally strenuous work, like I don't want to go back in there myself, so remotely, and I'll be able to see, he could see what they see on his little TV screens. Remotely, I'm going to have the robots do it, which was an interesting, there's so many interesting elements and so many little things about this movie in regards to, mechanized stuff taking over, the positives and negatives of mechanization and stuff like that. So I think that pretty much does it for my movie/Blu-ray review. Definitely glad to have picked this up for $20 versus its probably normally $28 price tag or something like that, although I would probably say if you've got the money falling out of your you-know-what, it's probably worth $28 price tag. It would probably most likely normally have on it. I guess that's one good thing that can be said for the quote-unquote holiday season. Thank you very much for watching this video, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Fields of children running wild in the sun. This is just not, I don't know if this is gonna work. Fields of yeah, I don't know if it's gonna work. Like a like a forest is your child grow. Okay. Like in the sun, like a forest growing wild. I think just the first line's enough.